My twins were hungry, Maya had a fever, and I had nothing left. My ex Victor disappeared, leaving us with debt, and my so-called friends vanished too. I typed a desperate plea for help, feeling utterly alone. When a reply came offering more than I dared dream, I realized I'd sent it to my millionaire boss. Now I'm sharing my journey. Like, share, and let me know where you're listening from. The floorboards of my tiny apartment groaned under my weight as I finally collapsed onto the worn sofa. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest, a symphony of aches after another grueling 18-hour shift. The last thing I remembered was locking the door, the chill of the evening air biting at my exposed skin, then a blur of motion before gravity took over. Above me in their shared cot, I could hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of Mia and Leo, my 2-year-old twins. Their presence was the only thing that kept me going, the constant, powerful thrumming of love and responsibility in my chest. As the fog of exhaustion began to clear, the harsh reality of our situation crashed over me like a cold wave. My gaze drifted to the kitchen, where the refrigerator stood like a silent, mocking monolith. It was utterly, tragically empty, a barren wasteland where food should have been. My purse, lying discarded on the small coffee table, contained precisely $20, and the electricity bill was due tomorrow. The next paycheck was a week away, an eternity when hunger gnawed at your stomach and fear squeezed your heart. It had been 6 months since Victor, my ex-husband, had simply vanished. One morning he was there making promises about a better future. The next he was gone, leaving behind only an avalanche of debt and 2 bewildered infants. He had taken his belongings, his dreams, and every last shred of my trust. The financial burden he left was crushing, forcing me to take on any work I could find, blurring the lines between days and nights until my life felt like one long, endless shift. I worked as a cleaner for a corporate building during the day and waited tables at a diner late into the night. It was barely enough to keep a roof over our heads, let alone fill our stomachs. In my moments of despair, I had tried to reach out. My sister Clara lived 3 states away, struggling with her own family and barely making ends meet. A call to her would only burden her further, and I knew she had nothing to spare. My mother, geographically closer but emotionally distant, had always been more concerned with appearances than with my genuine struggles. Her advice usually involved pulling myself up by my bootstraps, a phrase that felt particularly cruel when my boots were barely clinging to my feet. Friends? The few I had made before Victor's departure had evaporated like mist, unwilling to witness my decline or unable to offer practical help. I was utterly alone in this battle. A small cough from the bedroom jolted me upright. Mia. My heart lurched. She'd been a little feverish all about, her tiny hand feeling warm against my cheek. I had dismissed it earlier, hoping it was just a slight chill, but now the sound brought a fresh wave of panic. I had no money for medicine, not even the simplest children's pain reliever. The guilt was a physical ache, a searing pain that twisted deep within me. I was their mother, their protector, and I couldn't even afford to make my sick daughter comfortable. This raw, primal desperation overwhelmed me, eroding whatever pride I had left. With trembling fingers, I fumbled for my phone. There was only one person, however futile, could try. Clara. Even if she couldn't help, maybe just talking to her would offer a sliver of comfort. My thumbs hovered over the keypad, the screen blurring through unshed tears. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and began to type. Clara, I started, the word tasting like ash. I know you're busy, but I'm really struggling. Mia's not well and the fridge is empty. I just need $40 for groceries to get us through until payday. Please, if there's any way. I trailed off, the plea hanging in the digital space. It felt humiliating, exposing my vulnerability so completely. After a moment of hesitation, I pressed send, my finger hovering over the button as if it held the weight of my entire world. The reply came almost instantly, a surprising ping that made me jump. My heart pounded with a mix of dread and faint hope. But the message that appeared on my screen was not the casual, sympathetic tone I expected from Clara. It was professional, formal, and strikingly direct. Lena, I understand your predicament. While I am not Clara, I received your message. I believe I can offer more than a temporary solution. Please meet me at my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. We can discuss your situation and explore options for long-term support. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. My eyes scanned the name at the top of the message. It wasn't Clara. My blood ran cold as I reread the contact name. Arthur Sterling, my millionaire employer, the stoic, distant owner of the corporate building I cleaned 5 days a week, the man whose presence commanded immediate silence, whose office was a sanctuary of power and wealth I had only ever glimpsed through a half-open door. My stomach dropped like a stone. Oh God, I had meant to send it to Clara Jenkins, not Arthur Sterling. How could I have been so careless? My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure panic. My mind raced, envisioning the immediate consequences. He would think I was manipulative, trying to exploit him. He would fire me. Losing this job, meager as it was, would mean utter destitution. We would be out on the streets. Without thinking, I frantically typed an apology. "Oh, Mr. Sterling, I am so incredibly sorry. That message was not intended for you. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. Please disregard it. I apologize for any inconvenience." I pressed send, my body shaking uncontrollably. Seconds later, another ping. My breath hitched. "Lena, I received your apology. However, my offer stands. I expect you in my office at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We will talk." The message was curt, unyielding. My initial panic slowly began to give way to a flicker of something else, something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. A fragile, almost unbelievable hope. Could he be serious? Was this some elaborate test? Or was he genuinely offering help? The idea was so far-fetched, so utterly unexpected, that it felt like a dream. But Mia's small cough echoed in my ears, and Leo's soft breathing reminded me of the stakes. My children deserved a chance, and if this, however bizarre, was it, I had to take it. I spent the rest of the night in a restless daze, the dread of confronting my formidable boss warring with it the desperate hope for my children's future. When the alarm finally jolted me awake, I knew what I had to do. I bundled Mia and Leo, still sleepy and warm, into their coats. My last $18, a cruel irony, would go to the emergency daycare across town. It was almost everything I had left, but I had no other choice. With a kiss to each of their foreheads, I left them in the care of a kind woman. My heart a tight knot of apprehension. Then I began the long walk to Arthur Sterling's office building. The imposing structure loomed against the morning sky, a titan of glass and steel, mirroring the man who waited inside. Each step felt heavy, a journey into the unknown, carrying the weight of my children's future and my own crumbling pride. The grand glass doors of the Sterling Industries building loomed before me, a stark contrast to the small, worn daycare facility I had just left. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I pushed through, the cool, conditioned air washing over me. Every step on the polished marble floor felt like an intrusion. The receptionist, a woman with perfectly coiffed hair and an impossibly serene smile, greeted me with an unexpected warmth, directing me to a plush waiting area. I had always imagined Arthur Sterling's office, indeed his entire corporate world, to be as cold and austere as the few glimpses I'd caught of his pristine, minimalist mansion when I cleaned there. But his actual office suite, when the receptionist finally led me to it, was surprisingly different. Warm, soft lighting emanated from hidden sources, illuminating rich mahogany and deep leather. A large window offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the city, but the room itself felt less like a sterile command center and more like a carefully curated study filled with books and understated art. It was impressive, yet inviting, a paradox that only deepened my unease. Arthur Sterling stood by the window, his back to me, silhouetted against the cityscape. He was taller than I remembered, his frame broad and commanding, but when he turned, his expression wasn't the cold, impenetrable mask I anticipated. His gaze, behind impeccably framed spectacles, held a genuine concern that momentarily disarmed me. "Lena," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble. He extended a hand and I took it, my calloused fingers feeling rough and insignificant in his firm, smooth grip. "Thank you for coming." I felt acutely aware of my faded floral dress, the one I usually reserved for grocery runs, and the scuffed heels that pinch my toes. My hair, hastily pulled into a ponytail, probably had stray wisps escaping, and I knew my eyes, perpetually tired, held a pleading desperation I couldn't hide. I felt utterly, tragically out of place, like a wilting dandelion in a manicured rose garden. My instinct was to immediately launch into a torrent of apologies, to explain away the accidental text, to grovel and beg him not to fire me. "Mr. Sterling, I am so truly sorry about that message yesterday," I began, my voice a nervous whisper. "It was a terrible mistake, an oversight on my part. I never meant to bother you, and I certainly didn't expect you to reply. I understand if this jeopardizes my position, and I entirely accept—" He raised a hand, cutting me off gently but firmly. "Lena," he interrupted, his gaze unwavering, "please sit. There's no need for apologies, nor is your position in jeopardy." He gestured to one of the leather armchairs opposite his expansive desk. I sank into it, bewildered, my heart still racing. He took his seat, leaning forward slightly, his hands clasped on the polished surface. "I've been aware of your difficulties for months, Lena, much longer than you might think." His words struck me with a jolt. How could he know? My life was a meticulously guarded struggle. I don't understand, Mr. Sterling," I stammered, my brow furrowed in confusion. A sigh escaped him. "I regret that I didn't offer help sooner. I saw you, Lena, often, arriving before dawn, leaving long after sunset. The exhaustion in your eyes, the way you moved. I noticed the changes over the past 6 months, the increasingly late hours, the visible toll it was taking. I asked around about you. I learned about your situation, about Victor, about the children of Baton." He paused, his expression etched with a rare vulnerability. "I should have intervened. It was a failure on my part to wait for you to reach out, even accidentally." His confession left me speechless. The weight of his words, his unexpected kindness, felt almost too much to bear. My throat tightened, and I had to swallow hard to keep the tears at bay. I had assumed I was invisible, just another cleaner, a faceless cog in the machine. To know that someone, especially someone as powerful as Arthur Sterling, had seen me, had truly seen my struggle, was profoundly unsettling and strangely comforting. All at once, he shifted, his gaze becoming more focused, more analytical. "Speaking of Victor," he began, his tone now a blend of curiosity and something more profound. "Tell me, Lena, what was Victor's last job? Before he, left?" The question caught me off guard. Why would he care about Victor? My mind scrambled, trying to recall the details Victor had fed me. He worked in sales," I said, a slight hesitation in my voice. "For a company, I think it was called Global Solutions. He said he was laid off about a year ago when the company downsized." Arthur Sterling listened patiently, his eyes never leaving mine. A flicker, almost imperceptible, crossed his face. Then he leaned back, his gaze steady, almost unnervingly so. "Lena," he said, his voice softer now, yet imbued with a steeliness that sent a shiver down my spine. "Victor didn't work for Global Solutions, and he was not laid off." My heart gave a violent lurch. "What?" I breathed, the single word a mere whisper. "No, that can't be right. He told me—" He was very clear. He showed me the letters, the severance package. A cold dread began to creep through me, an insidious tendril of doubt. Victor wouldn't lie about something like that. Arthur's expression remained unreadable. He reached for a tablet on his desk, his fingers moving with practiced ease. "Victor Jensen," he stated, his voice flat, "was employed by Sterling Industries. He was a senior sales executive in our technology division. He wasn't laid off, Lena. He was dismissed for cause." A dizzying wave washed over me. It felt like the floor had tilted beneath my feet. Sterling Industries. Victor. This was impossible. My husband, the father of my children, had worked for him and been fired? Why would he lie? The questions swirled in my head, each one more disorienting than the last. "No," I insisted, shaking my head, a desperate denial clinging to my voice. "He would have told me. We shared everything. He would never keep something like that from me." Arthur's eyes softened slightly, a hint of sorrow in their depths. Lena, did you ever question his late-night meetings, the unexplained bonuses that seemed to appear in your joint account, or the extended business trips that often ran longer than anticipated? Each question was a carefully aimed arrow, striking directly at forgotten doubts, half-formed suspicions I had pushed aside, attributed to my own overthinking or insecurity. The late nights, he'd always claimed, were for important clients in different time zones. The bonuses, he'd said were commissioned from particularly lucrative deals. The extended trips were just part of the demanding life of a top salesman. I had believed him. I had wanted to believe him. The memories, once benign, now twisted into grotesque shapes, revealing their hidden, sinister meanings. A cold knot formed in my stomach. He turned the tablet towards me, displaying a document. It was a performance review, official and damning. Victor Jensen's name was at the top. The document detailed a pattern of attendance issues, missed deadlines, a general lack of commitment, and a significant drop in sales figures over several months. It was irrefutable proof, cold hard data that contradicted every story Victor had ever told me about his career. My vision blurred, the words on the screen swimming before my eyes. Victor stopped working for Sterling Industries 3 weeks before he left you, Lena, Arthur continued, his voice devoid of judgment, simply stating the facts. He was fully aware of his termination, and he knew he had no income. Yet he continued to maintain the illusion of employment until his departure. The air in the room suddenly felt thin, suffocating. 3 weeks. He had planned this. He hadn't just left. He had plotted his exit, systematically dismantling our life, orchestrating his escape while I was oblivious, consumed by the demands of motherhood and our seemingly normal life. The betrayal hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing my breath. It wasn't just abandonment. It was a calculated deception, a cruel, prolonged lie. Arthur paused, allowing the information to sink in. Then, his next question, delivered with a quiet intensity, felt like the final hammer blow. In those last months, Lena, did Victor ever ask you to sign any documents? Perhaps banking papers or documents relating to your house, or any other financial agreements? Anything at all, perhaps when you were tired or busy with the twins? My mind raced back, sifting through the haze of exhaustion that had defined those final weeks before Victor left. I remembered snippets. Victor, placing papers in front of me, a pen in my hand. "Just routine stuff, honey," he'd murmured, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Company forms. You trust me, don't you?" And I had, completely, utterly. I remembered signing, barely glancing at the words, too tired to comprehend, too trusting to question. The sheer terrifying implications of his question began to dawn on me, a new, even darker layer of his betrayal unfurling before my eyes. Arthur Sterling closed his eyes for a brief moment, a fleeting gesture that seemed to convey a deep, personal understanding of the situation. When he opened them again, the concern in his gaze was even more pronounced. "Lena," he said, his voice softer, almost mournful, "I'm afraid there's a lot more going on here than just Victor leaving. Much, much more." A cold, heavy knot tightened in my stomach. The implications of his questions, of his knowing expression, were beginning to coalesce into a terrifying picture. My mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of what he was hinting at. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk, his eyes fixed on mine. "Lena, you need to check everything. Your bank accounts, every single one. Your mortgage documents, if you have any investments you thought you had, any loans in your name, every piece of paper you signed, especially in those last few months. Do it immediately." My breath caught in my throat. A dreadful premonition, a sickening chill, snaked its way through my veins. The pieces were falling into place, each one more horrifying than the last. The sudden, inexplicable debt that had plagued me since Victor left. The confusion over why everything had plummeted so drastically. It couldn't be. "Are you saying," I choked out, the words catching in my throat, "are you saying he stole from me?" The accusation, even unspoken, felt like a betrayal of my own judgment, my own trust. Arthur didn't answer directly, but the slight tightening around his mouth, the almost imperceptible shake of his head, confirmed my worst fears. He seemed to sigh, a sound of weary resignation. "I've been watching you struggle, Lena," he admitted, his gaze drifting towards the vast city spread out beyond the window. "I recognize the signs, the desperate exhaustion, the sudden disappearance of your spouse, the overwhelming debt you clearly didn't anticipate. I've seen this before. I wondered when you'd reach out, when the burden would finally become too much to bear." His words, while compassionate, stirred a fresh wave of bewilderment. Why him? Why was he, a man I barely knew, whose carpets I cleaned, so concerned? "But why do you care, Mr. Sterling?" I asked, a raw edge to my voice. I'm just someone who cleans your house. I'm an employee, nothing more. My personal life shouldn't concern you." He turned back to me, his expression earnest. "Because, Lena," he began, his voice dropping slightly, "I've been there. Not in your exact circumstances, of course, but I understand the feeling of being utterly blindsided by someone you trusted implicitly." He paused, a shadow crossing his features. "Years ago, my own ex-wife, Eleanor, did something similar. Not quite the same, but financially devastating. She systematically drained our joint accounts, took out loans in my name, and disappeared without a trace, leaving a trail of financial wreckage in her wake." As he spoke, a flicker of genuine pain passed through his eyes. His story, though different in scale, resonated with a horrifying familiarity. He had lost everything too, or at least a significant portion of it, to someone he loved. He knew this particular kind of betrayal. "The difference, Lena," he continued, "is that I had resources. I had lawyers, financial investigators, the means to protect myself and recover what was lost. You, on the other hand, from what I've observed, do not. You're left to navigate this minefield alone, with two small children depending on you." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken understanding. The depth of his empathy was startling, almost overwhelming. Part of me, the part that clung to a shred of pride, wanted to refuse, to say, "No, thank you, I'll manage," to maintain some semblance of independence even as my world crumbled. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate your concern truly, but I can't accept charity," I said, my voice thin, attempting to sound more resolute than I felt. "It wouldn't be right." He regarded me steadily, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Charity, Hank, story," he countered, a slight raising of an eyebrow. "Lena, I assure you this is not charity. I am offering you a partnership, a real job. My properties, for instance, are vast and numerous. I need someone competent, trustworthy, and detail-oriented to manage them, to oversee the cleaning staff, handle maintenance schedules, manage supplies, and ensure everything runs smoothly. Someone who has shown exceptional dedication and reliability in their current role." He paused, his gaze significant. "Someone, in short, exactly like you." The proposal hung in the air, dizzying in its unexpectedness. A real job. Management. It wasn't just a handout, it was an opportunity, a genuine pathway out of the abyss. But even as a flicker of hope ignited within me, the cold reality of Victor's deception remained. "However," Arthur added, his tone becoming serious once more, "before we can even begin to discuss the practicalities of that, we need to uncover the full extent of Victor's actions. We need to know precisely what he did, what he stole, and what he left you with. This isn't just about recovering money, Lena. It's about securing your future and protecting your children from any lingering consequences of his deceit." His words were a stark reminder that while this accidental text had opened a potential lifeline, it had also ripped open a wound I hadn't even known was there, revealing a far deeper, more insidious betrayal than I could have ever imagined. The worst, I realized with a chilling certainty, was likely still to come. But now, at least, I wouldn't be facing it alone. The sheer weight of that realization, the unexpected ally in Arthur Sterling, felt like a heavy stone, both terrifying and profoundly comforting, settling in my chest. I had walked into this office fearing dismissal, and instead I was staring into the face of a truth that would change everything. The sterile, hushed atmosphere of the bank felt oppressively heavy as Arthur and I sat opposite Mrs. Patterson, the branch manager. Her discomfort was palpable, confirming the dread that had been steadily building in my chest since Arthur's revelations. Her fingers fidgeted with a stack of papers, and her whispers, when it met mine, was filled with a pity that sent a cold shiver down my spine. "Thank you for seeing us on such short notice, Mrs. Patterson," Arthur began, his voice calm and authoritative, cutting through the tension. "We're here to discuss Lena's accounts." Mrs. Patterson nodded, her gaze flickering nervously to me. "Of course, Mr. Sterling. Miss Jensen." She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly on the desk. "I've pulled up the records, as requested. There has been unusual activity regarding your accounts, Miss Jensen." Unusual activity was an understatement. My checking account, she revealed, had been officially closed 6 weeks ago. My savings account, the small nest egg I had meticulously built before the twins were born, had been emptied 8 weeks prior. Both were now at a resounding zero. Joint credit cards, which I had believed were only for emergencies, were maxed out, accumulating over $30,000 in debt. $30,000 gone, just like that. I gasped, a strangled sound that caught in my throat. "Closed? But that's impossible," I stammered, shaking my head vehemently. "I never closed those accounts. I would never. And the credit cards, I haven't used them in months." A wave of nausea washed over me, threatening to overwhelm me. This couldn't be happening. My entire financial history, wiped clean, then buried under a mountain of debt. Mrs. Patterson's gaze was empathetic but firm. "Ms. Jensen, Mr. Jensen presented valid documentation. He used a power of attorney you signed, which granted him full authority over your financial affairs. With that, he was able to close accounts and utilize credit lines as he saw fit." A power of attorney. The words echoed ominously in my mind. My memory, usually so reliable, struggled to place such a significant act. Then a horrifying image surfaced. A hospital bed, the blur of white walls and the comforting weight of a newborn in each arm. Victor, smiling, holding out a pen and a stack of papers. "Just some routine forms for the bank, honey. Now that the twins are here, we need to update our joint accounts, establish a trust for our money. You're too tired. Just sign here, here, and here. I'll take care of it." My mind, still fuzzy from childbirth, my body aching with a profound exhaustion, had numbly obeyed. Trusting. So trusting. Mrs. Patterson, sensing my distress, slid a document across the table. It was a copy of the power of attorney, dated 14 months ago, less than 2 weeks after Mia and Leo were born, and there at the bottom was my signature. Faint, shaky, barely legible, but undeniably mine. It was a cruel, calculated deception, planned while I was at my most vulnerable. Arthur, who had been listening in controlled silence, slammed his fist lightly on the table, the sharp thud startling both Mrs. Patterson and me. His expression was grim, a barely contained fury simmering in his eyes. "The house," he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "What about the house, Mrs. Patterson?" Mrs. Patterson swallowed hard, her gaze darting between us. "The house. Mr. Jensen refinanced the mortgage about 6 months ago." She paused, as if bracing herself. "And he also took out a home equity loan for $45,000. The air was sucked out of my lungs. $45,000. On top of everything else. My childhood home, the only true asset I had, the one stable thing in my life, was now mortgaged to the hilt, its equity stripped away. My head spun. "But where did the money go?" I asked, my voice barely a croak. "Did it go into our accounts?" She shook her head, a look of genuine regret on her face. "No, Ms. Jensen. According to our records, the funds from the home equity loan were dispersed directly to an account in Mr. Jensen's name only, at a different financial institution. It never entered any of your existing joint accounts with us. He had not only drained my personal funds, but had also mortgaged our home, funneling the money directly into his own private accounts. This wasn't just stealing, it was a systematic, ruthless dismantling of my entire financial life, orchestrated with chilling precision. He hadn't just left me, he had orphaned me financially." Arthur's fury was now palpable, radiating from him in waves. He leaned forward again, his voice cutting through the suffocating silence. "Do you still have the deed to your house, Lena?" I blinked, confused. Yes, I think so. It's in a box in the closet with all the important papers. We need to see it, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Now there's a chance, given everything else, that he might have tried to transfer ownership. The drive back to my tiny apartment was a blur. My mind was reeling, struggling to process the enormity of the betrayal. $45,000, my savings, my checking account, all gone. And the house that was supposed to be a sanctuary for my children. Inside the cramped apartment, I frantically searched the closet, my hands shaking as I rummaged through old photo albums and dusty tax documents. Finally, at the bottom of a cardboard box, I found it, a thick envelope labeled House Deed. I pulled it out, my fingers fumbling with the seal. The paper felt new, too new for a document that was over 30 years old, passed down from my grandparents. Arthur took it from me, his brow furrowed as he scanned the official-looking document. His expression hardened, growing increasingly grim with each line he read. Then he looked up at me, his eyes filled with a fresh wave of sorrow and controlled rage. "Lena," he said, his voice quiet, almost hoarse. "Your name isn't on this deed." The world tilted. "What? That's impossible. It's my family home. My grandparents left it to my mother, and she left it to me." "He had you sign a quit-claim deed," Arthur explained, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "This document here, it legally transferred ownership of the house from you to him. He likely had you sign this when you signed the power of attorney, or perhaps during one of those routine financial updates you mentioned." The memory, a faint flicker, surfaced again. A pile of papers. Victor's reassuring smile. "Just signing over some old paperwork, darling, for the new mortgage. Nothing to worry about, just standard procedure. It's all in our name now." I had trusted him. I had trusted him with everything. He hadn't just taken my money, he had taken my home. He had left me and my children completely destitute. My legs gave out. I sank onto the floor, the deed fluttering from my numb fingers. The betrayal was so profound, so utterly devastating, that it felt like a physical blow. The hairs, hot and uncontrollable, streamed down my face. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My entire world, my past, my present, and my children's future, had been systematically stolen from me. Arthur didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone, his jaw clenched, his eyes still on the damning document. "Marcus," he said, his voice calm but with an underlying steel that bespoke a simmering rage. "It's Arthur. I need you to check something for me immediately. Has the property at 123 Maple Street been sold recently? I need to know if Lena Jensen's former home is still in Victor Jensen's name, or if he's already cashed out." The question hung in the air, a final, horrifying possibility that threatened to shatter what little remained of my hope. If you're finding Lena's story as shocking as I am, please keep watching to uncover the full extent of this betrayal. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with her journey. Arthur hung up the phone, his face a mask of grim determination. He sat down on the edge of my worn sofa, leaving me crumpled on the floor, the crumpled deed beside me. The silence in the small apartment was deafening, punctuated only by my ragged breaths and the distant sounds of city life filtering through the window. My mind was a whirlwind of images. Victor's smile, his reassuring words, the innocent signatures, and the cold, hard facts of my utter ruin. The full scope of his calculated betrayal, spanning months, even years, was a gaping chasm opening beneath my feet. "Lena," Arthur began, his voice softer than I had ever heard it, almost hesitant. He took a deep breath. "There's something else I need to tell you about Eleanor, my ex-wife." I looked up, my tear-filled eyes meeting his. What more could possibly be revealed? I wasn't entirely truthful with you earlier," he confessed, his gaze dropping to his clasped hands. "Eleanor didn't leave me. She passed away 3 years ago. She died of cancer." My heart, already fractured, ached with a fresh wave of sympathy. The raw pain in his voice was unmistakable. "Oh, Mr. Sterling," I murmured, genuinely sorry for his loss. He lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a complex mix of sorrow and regret. "I lied to you, Lena. Because the truth is still incredibly painful and complicated. And frankly, I feared it would scare you away. I was afraid you wouldn't trust me if you knew the full story, or that you would think I was unstable for burdening you with it. He paused, a deep sigh escaping him. Our marriage was already fractured before she got sick. We were estranged, living separate lives under the same roof. When she was diagnosed, I tried to make amends, to be there for her. But it was too late for us, as a couple. And in her final months, my daughter Chloe blamed me. Blamed me for not saving her mother, for not being a better husband, for letting our family fall apart. She pulled away, and we haven't spoken properly since Eleanor's death. His confession hung in the air, a testament to a different kind of pain, a different kind of loss. A loss not of money or property, but of family, of love, of the unrecoverable past. When I saw you, Lena, he continued, his voice heavy, struggling, alone with your children, I saw echoes of my own past failures. I saw a chance to do something good, to make a difference where I couldn't before. My initial motivation to help you, to be completely honest, was a desperate attempt at redemption. To right a wrong, even if it was a different wrong, a different family. I saw your innocence, your trust, and Victor's exploitation, and it reminded me of the helplessness I felt and still feel regarding Chloe. Just then his phone buzzed. It was Marcus. Arthur answered, placing the call on speaker, his eyes never leaving mine. Marcus, any news on the Maple Street property? Arthur asked, his voice tight. Yes, Arthur, I've checked the records. The house was sold 4 weeks ago. Marcus's voice crackled through the phone. For $87,000, well below market value, I might add. Looks like a cash deal, closed very quickly. My blood ran cold. 4 weeks ago, the house was gone. My home, the last tangible piece of my past, the only true inheritance I had for my children. $87,000. Victor had gotten away with it all. I felt a piercing pain, a hollowness that threatened to consume me entirely. Arthur clicked off the phone, his expression grim. Lena, he said softly, his voice full of sorrow, this means you are, legally speaking, homeless, and you have been for weeks without even knowing it. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Homeless? With 2 toddlers. The full, terrifying reality of my situation slammed into me, hard and merciless. My entire life had been dismantled, piece by piece, by the man I loved, the man I trusted, the father of my children. Wika, I managed to whisper, the word raw and broken. Why would he do this? Why sell it so cheap? Where's the money, White? Arthur sighed, running a hand over his face. This kind of quick sale, far below market value, usually indicates desperation, Lena. Victor was likely in serious trouble. He needed cash, fast. And he didn't care what he had to do to get it, or who he hurt in the process. He paused, his gaze thoughtful. Which brings me to the other truth I need to tell you. The other reason I am helping you. I looked at him, my eyes wide and pleading. Why, Arthur, why are you really helping me? You're a powerful man. You have a reputation to protect. Why get involved in my mess? He met my gaze directly, his expression serious. Because, Lena, Victor wasn't just a poor employee who was dismissed for cause. He wasn't just lying to you about his job. Victor was stealing from Sterling Industries, from my company. My jaw dropped. The words, though shocking, almost made a perverse sense. A man capable of such profound deception against his own family would certainly not hesitate to steal from his employer. He was embezzling, Lena, Arthur continued, his voice hard now, tinged with a cold anger. From client accounts, not in massive amounts all at once, but small, consistent sums that added up. Enough to press charges, enough to send him to prison for a long time. He paused, a shadow passing over his face. I caught him, of course. My security systems are robust. When I confronted him, he begged. He pleaded. He talked about his children, about you. He promised to repay every penny, to disappear, to leave you out of it entirely. I made a choice then, a decision I now deeply question. I chose not to pursue legal action. I chose to let him go, hoping that by protecting his children from the public scandal and the ignominy of their father's imprisonment, I was doing some good. I thought he would take his severance, disappear, and find a way to start fresh. I thought I was protecting Yowen and the twins, Lena. Instead, I gave him the freedom to do this to you. The revelation hit me like a physical blow, a fresh wave of understanding and pain. Arthur Sterling hadn't just known about Victor's dishonesty, he had actively, though misguidedly, shielded him. He had chosen compassion, and Victor had twisted it into an opportunity for further malice. His motivation for helping me now wasn't just redemption for his estranged daughter, but a profound regret over a choice that had inadvertently led to my complete ruin. The full picture of Victor's vile act and Arthur's complicity in allowing it to unfold was now terrifyingly clear, and it bound us together, two victims of one man's insidious deceit. 2 weeks later, my life had undergone a transformation so profound, it often felt like a dream I might wake from. I was no longer sleeping on a worn sofa in a practically empty apartment. Instead, I lived in Arthur Sterling's elegant guest house, nestled amidst the sprawling, meticulously manicured grounds of his estate. The guest house was a small, beautifully furnished home in itself, offering a level of comfort and security I hadn't known in years. I was no longer just a cleaner. I was Arthur's property manager. My days were now filled with overseeing the various staff members who maintained the estate, coordinating repairs, managing supplies, and ensuring the smooth operation of several other properties Arthur owned. It was a challenging role, demanding and requiring a steep learning curve, but it was fulfilling. I had a purpose, a professional identity, and most importantly, a steady income that meant my children were safe, warm, and well-fed. Mia and Leo were thriving, their laughter echoing through the guest house, a melody that slowly, tentatively, began to heal my wounded heart. Arthur had even arranged for a trusted, discreet nanny to help with the twins while I was working, ensuring they had consistent, loving care. Arthur himself was away on a business trip, a scheduled absence that had coincided with my starting the new role. He had left explicit instructions for me to call him directly if anything, no matter how small, felt amiss. I had assured him I would be fine, clinging to the newfound stability. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, the illusion of peace shattered. I was in the guest house living room, reviewing some maintenance schedules, while Mia and Leo were napping in their room. A sleek black car, unfamiliar and out of place, slowly glided up the long, winding driveway of the main mansion, then turned towards the guest house. My heart immediately began to pound with a frantic, unwelcome rhythm. A prickle of unease crept up my spine. The car stopped abruptly. The driver's door opened, and a figure emerged. Taller, perhaps a little heavier, with a different haircut, but there was no mistaking him. Victor. My blood ran cold, fear and a potent surge of anger warring within me. What was he doing here? How had he even found me? He strode purposefully towards the guest house door, his steps radiating a false confidence. Before I could even react, he began aggressively ringing the doorbell, a series of short, insistent bursts that reverberated through the quiet house. Then he started shouting my name, his voice echoing, harsh and demanding. "Lena! Lena! Open up! I know you're in there!" The sudden noise jolted Mia and Leo awake. I heard a whimper, then the start of a fussy cry from their room. My protective instincts flared, pushing down the fear. I couldn't let him upset my children. Not now, not ever again. I moved to the door, my hand automatically going to the heavy security chain, sliding it firmly into place before even touching the handle. Through the narrow gap, I could see his face. Now closer, his features sharper than I remembered. A predatory glint in his eyes. He looked well, too well. His clothes were expensive, tailored, a stark contrast to the haggard, defeated man who had vanished 6 months ago. He noticed my improved appearance instantly. My hair was styled, my clothes were new and well-fitting. My face, though still tired, held a newfound resilience. His forced smile faltered for a second, a flash of something ugly crossing his features before he regained his composure. "Lena, darling," he began, his voice dropping into a falsely contrite, sweet tone I once found endearing. Now it just grated. "I've been looking for you. I was so worried. I made a mistake, leaving like I did. A terrible mistake. I want to make things right. I want to reconcile, Lena. For the children. For us." The audacity of it took my breath away. Reconcile? After everything? After stripping me bare, leaving me to rot? My anger solidified, hardening into a cold, unbreakable resolve. "Don't you dare, Victor," I said, my voice low and steady, surprising even myself with its firmness. "There is no us, and there will be no reconciliation. The divorce papers have been filed. Your abandonment forfeited any claim you thought you had, not just to me, but to our children. You vanished. You chose to leave." His false sweetness vanished, replaced by a sneer. "Divorce papers? What are you talking about? And what is this place, Lena? You're shacking up with my old boss, aren't you? Living high off his money while I was out of there trying to make a life for myself." His eyes narrowed, burning with a mixture of resentment and something darker. "Your life involves stealing from Arthur, embezzling from his clients, and systematically defrauding me out of every penny I owned, including my home," I retorted, the words tumbling out, fueled by righteous anger. He scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Embezzlement? That's ridiculous. Those were just misunderstandings about expense accounts, creative accounting. That's all. Arthur knows how these things work. He let me go without a fuss, didn't he? Because he knew it was nothing. You're being dramatic." Then with a flourish that was pure Victor, he pulled a thick, official-looking envelope from inside his jacket. My stomach clenched. "But since you want to be dramatic, Lena," he continued, a cruel glint in his eyes, "let's talk about the children." He pulled out some papers, fanning them slightly so I could see the bold title. "Custody papers, Lena. I'm requesting full custody of Mia and Leo." My blood ran cold. Full custody? It was an unthinkable, horrifying proposition. "You left them, Victor," I cried, my voice rising in a desperate plea. "You haven't seen them, haven't supported them in 6 months. You have no right." He leaned closer to the door, his voice dropping, insidious and manipulative. "Ah, but I do, darling. I have stability now, a proper home, a real job. And you, Lena? You're living in someone's guest house, practically a maid again. Your job still has you working long hours, leaving the children with strangers in daycare. Is that really a proper home environment? A mother who can barely afford to care for her own kids, relying on the charity of her rich boss? What kind of life is that for them?" He paused, a triumphant, sneering smile on his face. "The courts will see that I'm the one who can provide a stable, loving environment, and a father who is present, who can offer them everything you can't." In that moment, a chilling realization washed over me. He didn't want the children. Not really. He had abandoned them without a second thought, vanished without a trace. This wasn't about fatherly love or a desire for reconciliation. This was about money, about leverage. He wanted to use Mia and Leo as pawns, as a means to extort money from Arthur, or perhaps from me. He wanted to destroy my newfound stability and exploit my love for my children for his own twisted gain. The depths of his depravity seemed to know no bounds. He was a monster, pure and simple. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of disbelief and rage. The sheer audacity of Victor, standing there, demanding custody of children he had so cruelly abandoned, was beyond comprehension. But amidst the fury, a cold, sharp clarity cut through. He didn't want them. He never had. "Enough, Victor," I said, my voice shaking slightly, but laced with a new resolve. "Stop the pretense. We both know you have no interest in raising Mia and Leo. You told Arthur yourself when you begged for his mercy that you felt trapped by your family, by us." I watched his face, saw the flicker of surprise, the momentary loss of his carefully constructed facade. He hadn't expected me to know that. His smile, when it returned, was devoid of warmth, a predatory baring of teeth. "All right, Lena," he conceded, dropping the charade, his voice now flat and transactional. "You always were too smart for your own good. Fine, you're right. I have no burning desire to change diapers or attend PTA meetings. But these children," he gestured dismissively toward the guest house, towards the innocent sounds of Mia and Leo beginning to stir. "They have value, don't they?" My blood ran cold. "Value?" I spat, recoiling from the monstrous implication. "Of course," he continued, as if discussing a commodity, especially to Arthur. He clearly has a soft spot for you, for them. I mean, look at this place. The guaha, the nanny, he's practically adopted you all. He paused, a smug look on his face. And Arthur Sterling is a man who values security, reputation, and the happiness of those he cares about. He's also a man who avoids messy public scandals. He leaned in closer to the door, his voice dropping, taking on a conspiratorial tone. He wouldn't want the mother of the children he's so generously assisting to be dragged through a messy custody battle, would he? Especially when it would reveal his former employee, me, exposing his generosity and your unique living situation. He'd pay a substantial amount to ensure your continued happiness and, more importantly, the children's security. Wouldn't he? The full, ugly truth of his plan slammed into me. This wasn't just an attempt to regain control. It was pure, unadulterated blackmail. He was holding my children, my newfound stability, and Arthur's reputation hostage. You're trying to blackmail us, I accused, my voice trembling with disgust. Victor chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Blackmail? Such a strong word, Lena. I prefer to think of it as securing my children's future, recognizing their inherent value, perhaps, or a reasonable settlement for me signing away all my parental rights. Custody, visitation, financial responsibility, everything. A clean break. You and Arthur can have them all to yourselves without any interference from me. Forever. My mind reeled. He was offering to sever all ties, to disappear from our lives permanently, for a price. He was selling his children. The concept was so depraved, so utterly devoid of human decency, that it made me physically ill. A wave of nausea washed over me. How much? I asked, forcing the words out, my voice barely a whisper. I braced myself, expecting an outrageous sum, but nothing could have prepared me for what he said next. He smiled, a cold, calculating grin that sent shivers down my spine. $200,000. The number hung in the air, impossibly vast, utterly obscene. $200,000 for Mia and Leo, for their father to disappear, for him to sign away the very essence of parenthood. My knees felt weak. $200,000, he repeated, savoring the shock on my face. It's a fair price, don't you think? Compensation for me giving up my rights to children who, let's be honest, are probably better off without me. And it ensures they have a truly stable, financially secure future, free from my complications. He gestured vaguely as if his past actions were merely minor inconveniences. Arthur won't pay you a dime, Victor, I cried, finding my voice again, fueled by fury. He wouldn't condone this kind of extortion. Victor shrugged, unfazed. Perhaps not, but if he refuses, I will proceed with these custody papers. He tapped the envelope. And I will fight for full custody in court. I'll paint a very clear picture of your situation, Lena. A single mother, recently homeless, now living in her employer's guest house, dependent on his charity, working long hours, leaving her children with nannies and in daycare. While I, on the other hand, he puffed out his chest, can present myself as a stable, reformed man with a good income, offering a traditional, loving home. The courts, Lena, care about stability and financial security, which, as I've proven, I can now provide. And I'm sure your new benefactor wouldn't want his role in all this, and the circumstances surrounding my dismissal, to become public record, would he say? His words, sickening as they were, held a chilling logic. He was right. The courts would look at the facts. My past struggles, however noble the reasons, could easily be twisted against me. And Arthur, a man who guarded his privacy fiercely, would certainly want to avoid any public scandal involving his company and my precarious living arrangement, no matter how innocent it truly was. He was holding me, Arthur, and my children's future completely hostage. I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to find a way out, a loophole, anything. The depths of his cruelty, his utter lack of conscience, were truly unfathomable. He was a monster who saw his own children as nothing more than bargaining chips. I need time, I said, my voice barely a whisper. To think. 48 hours. Victor's triumphant smile returned. He liked that. He thought he had me, had Arthur. 48 hours, he confirmed, his eyes gleaming with avarice. Not a minute more, Lena. If I don't hear from you or Arthur by then, I'm filing these papers. And then we let the courts decide who gets to raise Mia and Leo. He gave a mocking salute, turned on his heel, and returned to his car, leaving me shattered and gasping for breath. The image of his cruel smile burned into my mind. The sound of Arthur's car pulling up the long driveway was a relief I hadn't realized I was desperately needing. I had spent the past few hours in a state of agonizing turmoil, replaying Victor's cruel ultimatum, the horrifying price tag he'd placed on our children's freedom. The beautiful guest house, which had felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a PM, its walls closing in on me. Mia and Leo were thankfully back asleep, oblivious to the storm raging around them. I met Arthur on the back porch of the main mansion, a place we often sat for our evening discussions. The setting sun cast long shadows, but my world felt plunged into darkness. He took one look at my face, my tear-stained cheeks and trembling hands, and his calm demeanor instantly shifted. "Lena, what happened?" he asked, his voice filled with immediate concern, his eyes searching mine. The words tumbled out, a frantic, raw confession of Victor's visit, his threats, the utterly despicable demand for full custody. I relayed every detail, every chilling word, watching Arthur's expression grow increasingly severe with each revelation. When I finally reached the sum, the $200,000 Victor was demanding, Arthur's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping furiously in his cheek. His eyes, usually so composed, burned with an icy fury I had rarely seen. "He wants $200,000, I finished, my voice breaking. "For our children." Arthur took a deep, shaky breath, trying to regain his composure. He walked over to the patio railing, staring out at the expansive gardens, his back to me. "Lena," he said, his voice low, "it's time you knew the full truth about Victor's theft, the truth I tried to shield you from earlier." He turned back, his gaze meeting mine. "Victor embezzled almost $75,000 from client accounts, Lena. Not just minor misunderstandings, as he claimed. Deliberate, systematic theft." He pulled out his own tablet, displaying a series of complicated bank records. My eyes widened as I saw a trail of money transferred through various shell corporations, ultimately leading to accounts in the Cayman Islands. He moved the stolen money to offshore accounts and has been living there, living large, for the past 6 months. My mind reeled. $75,000, offshore accounts, the Cayman Islands. It was a staggering revelation, confirming the true depth of Victor's criminal intent. "But if he had $75,000, why is he back?" I asked, confused. "Why does he need $200,000 now?" Arthur's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "Because, Lena, $75,000 isn't an endless supply, especially when you're living a lavish lifestyle and have a serious gambling addiction. My investigators have been tracking him. Victor ran through most of that money quickly. He owes over $40,000 in gambling debts to some very unsavory characters in the Caribbean. He's desperate, and he sees you, he sees the children, and he sees my generosity as his last, best chance to get himself out of a hole he dug." A wave of both disgust and grim understanding washed over me. It wasn't just greed, it was absolute desperation fueled by his own recklessness. He saw us not as a family, but as a cash cow. Arthur then turned, his posture straightening, his eyes filled with a fierce determination. "This ends now. We're going to trap him, Lena. We'll make him think he's winning. We'll agree to his terms, but we will record every admission, every demand, every detail of his extortion. We will gather every single piece of evidence we need to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is an unfit parent, a criminal, and a blackmailer. He will never ever threaten you or our children again." My heart pounded with a mix of fear and a surge of unexpected courage. It was a dangerous plan, fraught with risk, but the alternative was unbearable. Just as I was about to agree, Arthur's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and a soft, tender expression, one I had only seen briefly before, crossed his face. "It's Chloe," he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "My daughter." He answered, walking a few steps away, his conversation hushed. I watched him, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. He spoke softly, intently, his focus entirely on the voice on the other end. After a few minutes, he hung up, a profound sense of relief and joy radiating from him. He turned back to me, his eyes shining. "Chloe's at the airport," he announced, a genuine smile breaking through his earlier grimness. "She saw my social media posts about you and the twins, the ones you helped me with for the company's charity initiative. She said seeing the pictures of me smiling, playing with Mia and Leo, seeing you, Lena, so happy and strong made her realize something. She said she wants to be happy again. She wants to come home." My breath hitched. The posts, which I had helped him curate for Sterling Industries' new family-focused community outreach program, were meant to show a different, more human side of Arthur. I had captured candid shots of him interacting with the twins during a small park outing, a genuine warmth in his usually reserved demeanor. It had worked, in a way I could never have imagined. Arthur walked towards me, his gaze intense, earnest. He took my hands in his touch firm and reassuring. "Lena," he began, his voice dropping, husky with emotion. "When I told you I wanted to build a family, I wasn't just talking about a theoretical future. I was talking about you, about Mia and Leo, about Chloe. You and the twins. You've brought a light back into my life that I thought was extinguished forever. You've shown me what real courage and resilience look like. I love you, Lena. And I love Mia and Leo. You are the family I want to build." His confession, unexpected and heartfelt, disarmed me completely. In the chaos of Victor's threats, in the midst of the dangerous plan, Arthur's declaration of love was a beacon, a solid foundation beneath my shaking feet. My heart, which had been so guarded, so wounded, felt a hesitant blooming of something new, something profoundly hopeful. Despite the fear, despite the perilous path ahead, his words filled me with a strength I hadn't known I possessed. "I'm with you, Arthur," I said, my voice steady, my grip firm on his hands. "Whatever it takes, for us, for Mia and Leo, for Chloe. We'll fight him. We'll set the trap." We stood there, hands clasped, bound by a shared enemy, a growing love, and an unwavering commitment to protect the innocent lives that depended on us. In that moment of shared vulnerability and renewed hope, we silently reaffirmed our commitment to each other, ready to face whatever Victor threw our way. The next morning dawned with a crisp, cool air, but the tension in the guest house was thick and heavy. Arthur had spent the night strategizing, his mind a whirlwind of legal precedents and tactical maneuvers. I, on the other hand, had battled a restless night filled with nightmares of Victor's sneering face. Yet, a quiet resolve had settled within me. We were ready. Arthur had contacted Victor, agreeing to the meeting. $200,000. The sum itself felt obscene, a symbol of Victor's unrepentant greed. The time was set for 11 o'clock in Arthur's private office. Victor, confident and smug, believed he held all the cards. He had no idea of the tiny, discreet recording device hidden beneath Arthur's desk, nor the sharp legal mind that awaited him. Precisely at 11, Victor strode into Arthur's office, radiating an arrogant self-assurance. He carried a thick folder, no doubt containing the parental rights termination papers, already prepared. He barely glanced at me, his eyes fixed on Arthur, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. "Arthur," he greeted, extending a hand that Arthur pointedly ignored. "Lena, good to see you've come to your senses." Arthur, impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of calm authority, gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Victor, let's dispense with the pleasantries. Lena has informed me of your proposal. I understand you're willing to relinquish your parental rights for a sum." Victor's smirk widened. "Exactly. A clean break. Everyone wins." "Indeed," Arthur said, his voice deceptively smooth. "But before we finalize this, I'd like to understand your motivations better. For the children's sake, of course. Why now, Victor? After 6 months of silence, why this sudden interest in their welfare, or lack thereof?" Victor, eager to secure his payoff, fell right into the trap. He launched into a tirade, a self-serving narrative about how the children had ruined his life, how they were a burden, how he felt trapped by the responsibilities of family. He spoke of his grand ambitions, his need for freedom, and how he had to reallocate his resources to achieve his potential. He didn't care that I was listening. His focus was entirely on Arthur and the money. Arthur's questions were like surgical strikes, gently nudging Victor to reveal more. And these resources, Victor, the ones you reallocated, did they perhaps include funds from Sterling Industries' client accounts? Victor's eyes flickered, but his greed overshadowed his caution. Those were misunderstandings.